Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we have with us Dr. R. Ramachandran of the Hindu Group to discuss the Mars Orbiter mission and what is going to happen now that the orbiter is in orbit. Dr. Ramachandran is also known as Bajji, so I'll call him Bajji. Bajji, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Looking at the Mars mission has at least up to this stage worked successfully. It's been a flawless performance. What next is going to happen? We're going to get instruments sending their information data back to us. What are the likely outcome of such data?
Well, even from the conceptualization stage, it was always intended to be a technology demonstrator, not so much of a science mission. So accordingly, with the limited size of the spacecraft and the limited capability of a launch vehicle, it was a modest satellite even in terms of the amount payload it can carry, and the instruments are therefore of limited capabilities, and we had only put some 5 instruments on board amounting to some 15 kilograms together. Mission of NASA which is going around, which is MAVEN, and having a collaborative effort in sharing data and seeing what best analysis can be done with the data that we gather. So in terms of science, I do not see that there will be great data emerging out of it or great results emerging out of this. Yes, it could be fortuitously proved to be successful in that front as well. If we are able to detect some methane, one of the instruments that it carries is the methane sensor, and none of the missions so far has specifically looked for methane because all indications in the past have been that there is probably no methane on Mars. It's only a probability that which could indicate a possible existence of life in the past. Right now we have again a fortuitous event happening on October 19th. That is the passage of comet Siding-Spring, which will come as close as about 1.5 lakh kilometers to Mars. And there are 2 satellites orbiting this thing, this planet. So it gives a good opportunity to look at the comet and get some new data, which was not possible earlier at such close quarters to observe a comet, and that may provide some interesting results. So these are the kind of things I think that will happen in the near future.
So what you are saying is the methane instrument is the one which may show some interesting results, and also what we capture of the comet. Now, other issue that you raised, though passingly, was that the payload was very low because of the nature of the launch vehicle, the PSLV. So does it mean that the GSLV is now something that should be important in India's next part of the program?
GSLV is important from a basic perspective of India's space program itself, that to be able to launch better communication satellites for our own purpose rather than looking at interplanetary missions of this kind. So we will be able to launch heavier size satellites, communication satellites, better remote sensing satellites, etc. So that will be the primary objective of GSLV itself. Yes, in the process, having built a GLV, and if it is successful, it can get into interplanetary and deep space missions which can carry better payloads and more massive satellites.
So what's the difference between the PSLV and the GSLV in these terms?
Well, PSLV was originally intended to launch only satellites into low Earth orbit. Basically looking at remote sensing satellites which sit around 300 to about 700 kilometers.
Also weather.
Also, not weather so much, because now of course you can do both given the better quality of instrument that you can put on board even on remote sensing satellites. But weather requires a kind of constant observation over your country. Okay. So it's always better to use geostationary satellites for that, whereas a remote sensing satellite will constantly go around the poles. So you don't have a constant look at a given region. You have to wait for it to come back over the region to see. So our weather satellites have been mostly the INSAT based system. GSLV is primarily required for launching heavier satellites for our own communication purposes.
And also because you can launch them in geostationary orbits, which means they stay over one place, continuously, because they are synced with the Earth's rotation.
That's right. That is the primary objective of being able to build a GSLV. So far we have been using Russian engines and engine developed based on the Russian design, which was Mark 1 and Mark 2 respectively. Now, we are going to make completely indigenously designed cryogenic engine, which will go into Mark 3, and there will be, by the end of the year, we will have a test of this Mark 3 cryogenic engine and a launch, which will be a dummy launch. It will be passive in the sense that the cryogenic engine will not really sort of operate, but all the avionics will be put in there to see whether how it's going to function. And next year, perhaps we will actually be able to launch a satellite with GSLV Mark 3.
So one of the things, of course, is that India has been under sanction. This has been a major issue, and the fact that self-reliance has been the mantra in that sense of ISRO. And today we see that it really has a good wide base of technologies, and the only gap has been in that sense the cryogenic engine. Leaving that out, there have been a lot of hype the Indian media has had on how this was a great achievement. Of course, it is a significant achievement, it is a great achievement, and somehow beaten everybody to some mythical race. What do you think of this jingoism of the media that we have seen over the Mars mission?
This is a problem with the Indian media in general. Now, you see, having achieved something like this, and rightly so, ISRO itself had projected only to be technology demonstrator. They were not trying to race with anybody or something like that. I mean, if the Chinese launch had failed, your second mission to Mars can also fail. Okay, it doesn't mean that every time you're going to launch a mission to Mars is going to be successful. So if China has failed and so you have succeeded, doesn't mean anything at all to me.
Or the fact ours is the first successful mission in the history of Mars missions. This kind of hype again.
You have also stood on others' shoulders. Let's remember this, that there have been missions earlier which have failed and many of them succeeded, and we have learned from their experiences. For example, the crucial technology inputs that have gone into building this Mars orbiter of ISRO would have learned from the failures of earlier missions. So it's that kind of, you have to look at it from that perspective rather than saying that this mission we have done in the first time, nobody has done so, we are the first in Asia, and so on and so forth. So I think that apart, it is true that it is a significant achievement in terms of technology demonstration that you have been able to build reliable systems which are enduring for long durations, which can sustain the harsh environments of space over 300 days and so on and so forth. So it gives a confidence and a boost for future such missions we want to undertake. So I think, and also having succeeded in a mission to Moon, you would have been already confident that such a mission should be possible. It's not going to be very difficult. And once you are able to achieve that trajectory towards Mars, rest is all automated. Okay, so it would have gone there anyway.
Even automation is technology, but that apart. So basically, yes, significant achievement, but this triumphalism is little misplaced.
Correct. For example, constantly you keep seeing in the media that ours cost only 450 crores and Mavin has cost a magnitude, one order of magnitude more and so on. That comparison completely meaningless to me, because firstly, yours is a very modest mission, and secondly, it's a government enterprise completely. To make this kind of comparison, that is one order of magnitude less and so on and so forth, because we have a lot of hidden costs in even this mission. That doesn't reflect in this 450 crores, because you're using government facilities, whereas NASA has to depend entirely on Lockheed Martin, which should have put in all their costs into costing this mission for them. Okay, so that comparison also.
But nevertheless, it could be a more frugal innovation.
It is frugal, like all our efforts in other sectors as well. This will be frugal compared to any effort in the West.
Modi gave his speech after the successful parking in the orbit of the moon of Mangalyaan. No mention of scientists who had worked in the past like Bhabha, like Sarabhai. No mention of Nehru or the past government, even this past government, which Manmohan Singh's government, which actually had planned this mission. Do you think it was a little misplaced again?
It was certainly misplaced to an extent, not give the credit to the scientists who were actually involved.
Yes, he didn't ask Radhakrishnan also to speak. That's the other part of it. Who was the chief of his?
The more interesting thing is, normally in after such a mission, there would be press conference. This time there was no press conference. I am told that it was Mr. Modi who wanted to make the final statement on the mission. Okay, so after his speech, there was no press conference. This is very interesting. So now, at least being a man from Gujarat and being so focused on Gujarat, even to our bilateral agreements and so on, he should have mentioned at least Sarabhai, who hails from the state. Okay, and the space program began from Ahmedabad. Okay, whether it was an oversight or he was not informed, well informed by his advisors, or he deliberately did so. But not to give credit to scientists who could actually put together such a mission in such a short time of 18 months. That's all, because it was sanctioned only in July 2012. Let's remember that. So within 18 months, 15 months, they could actually get the spacecraft ready and flying. So they deserve to be credited much more than what was done by Modi. Yeah.
So significant omission, if you will, yes, and a little bit of vainglorious statement by the leader. And he spoke for 26 minutes, so he had adequate time. Right. As somebody said, you know, the rocket engine fired for 24 minutes, Modi fired for longer. Now, so what about the questions like life on Mars, that our mission is going to find traces of life on Mars and so on? Do you think, again, these are completely innocence of science?
Well, if you do detect methane in the atmosphere, it's only an indicator, okay, that perhaps during the history of Mars, there may have been life form of some kind, yes. But you need to corroborate with other things, because methane could be produced by other chemical processes as well.
Geological phenomena.
Yeah. So if it's an indicator, you'll go about finding other evidences to say that it was indeed life at some point of time. But that said, I mean, let us not carry it too much that we can actually sustain life on distant planets of this kind for humans to go and settle or something like that. So that's a kind of a futuristic science fiction like kind of stuff.
Man missions or human person missions, whatever you want to call it, is not something which seems to be very attractive, because what is it that we can do with a human being we can't do with robotic instruments today?
Correct, that is true, exactly correct. So at best, if you want to look at manned missions, we should look at what has been attempted so far in all the manned missions, like the International Space Station and so on, where you actually try to do what best can be done in terms of growing better materials, better crystals, and how environment shapes the growth of plants and things like that, which you can replicate on the Earth to do better things on the ground, rather than saying that I will go and settle there and mine helium or whatever it is. So that kind of thing, yeah.
Wrapping this up, significant achievement in terms of technology demonstration. Science is limited because of the nature of the payload, and hopefully ISRO will now have a better base to look at what it can do in the future, including the GSLV program.
Look at the positive aspect of this mission. Okay, now ISRO's position in the world space industry has certainly vastly improved because of this mission, success of the mission.
It's a good marketing exercise.
Marketing, it can be turned into marketing.
I mean, I'm just joking, but it does have that impact.
It does have that impact, but to translate it requires a lot of things. Let me dwell on it a little bit. Unfortunately, despite all the previous missions of ISRO, we have not really expanded the technology base based on the spin-offs from. There are limited industries contributing to ISRO's missions, but this has to expand further. If we need to capture the world market in space technology in terms of launchers, in terms of building satellites, that would happen only if you have a very high turnover of these things. You should be able to build as many as, say, 10 launchers a year, or maybe 20 satellites in a year, but that requires a larger industrial base and larger manufacturing capability. And that, unfortunately, has not grown as well as ISRO itself has grown. So everything seems to be now concentrated and focused within the ISRO system rather than spun out into the general industrial base of the country.
So we need to spread more, the base has to widen, right, if we want to a viable space program, not just on one
for
or two
example,
launches.
we've not even captured the market of countries around us, Bangladesh, Thailand, Pakistan. Every country is looking for getting into space in the cheapest possible way, and India could have easily contributed to this greatly. But now look at the way China has been operating. China has stepped into everywhere. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Thailand. So they are all there. So we missed this opportunity all along because not being able to create adequate manufacturing capacity in the country.
Thank you very much, Baji. Good to have you with us. Hope to have you more for such programs.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah.